In today's video, we're at the quarter-mile drag strip and we're going to be racing a pair of highly modified Dodge Challenger Hellcats. You don't want to miss these races. It's insane to see how fast these cars are in the quarter mile. We're also going to be talking about Dodge ending production of their V8 gasoline engines and switching over to electric. So earlier this year, Dodge announced their new electric Charger and I think it looks absolutely amazing. It reminds me a lot of the Challenger, which is also a beautiful car, but it looks a little more updated, more futuristic, especially since it's going to be an electric vehicle. I really like the look of the front end, especially with the light bar. It reminds me a lot of the F-150 Lightning's light bar. And on the back side of the car, I really like how the rear taillights look as well. One thing I'm not a big fan of is this new emblem that Dodge is using for this new electric Charger. It's called a Fradzog. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's a callback to Dodge's earlier cars from 1962 to 1976. Overall though, I really love the look of this new electric Charger. What do you guys think? I think it looks great. So let's talk a little bit about the powertrains that are going to be available on this new Charger. The entry level is the Charger 340, and that's going to have 455 horsepower, which puts it in line with the dual motor Model 3. I would expect a 0 to 60 time of between 4 to 4.5 seconds, and that really depends on how big of a battery pack that Dodge is going to be putting in this car, which we don't know yet. My guess is that the range is going to be between 250 to 280 miles, but again, we don't know yet. Moving up to the Charger 440, we're looking at the equivalent of a Scat Pack, and that's going to give you about 590 horsepower. So that puts it in line with the Tesla Model 3 performance, just like this car right here, and that's going to give you a 0 to 60 time between 3 seconds to 3.5 is my guess. I would expect a low 3 seconds. And that would mean a quarter mile time of about 11.5 seconds, which is what this Model 3 performance runs. Now, as far as range, I would expect a little bigger of a battery pack on the Scat Pack version, so maybe 300 to 350 miles of range. Now, just like Tesla's, these new electric Chargers are going to be able to receive over-the-air updates, which means that Dodge is going to be able to update them and add more features later on. But this could also be a bad thing, and I'll get into that a little bit later on in this video. And finally, the new top-of-the-line version of this new electric Charger, the Hellcat equivalent, is going to have an 800-volt propulsion system. Now that is double that of the 400-volt propulsion systems that are going to be on the lower end versions of this Charger, so it's going to be able to make a lot more power. Now Dodge is saying that this new electric Hellcat is going to be more powerful than the gasoline-powered versions of this new Hellcat, but we'll have to wait and see. I'd be very curious to know if this new electric Hellcat is actually going to be more powerful than even the Demon 170. I'm going to assume that Dodge is talking about the red-eye versions of the Hellcat, which makes 717 horsepower, and not the Demon 170, which makes 1,025 horsepower. Nonetheless, that's a ton of power, and I can't wait to see these new electric Chargers. Let's talk a little bit about the innovations that Dodge is going to be bringing as well. The first is a new electromechanical shift system, which they call Erupt, which basically is going to simulate gear shifts. I think it's a really interesting idea, and I don't want to write it off yet without experiencing it first, but I'm still a little skeptical. So one of the big things I miss from switching to electric is not being able to shift my own gears. As you know, I used to have a few sports cars, and I really love to drive manual transmission. For me, it's such a joy to go through the canyons being able to shift my own gears. It's something I really do miss. Another thing Dodge is adding is this push to pass button, which basically sounds like a way to send more electrical power to the motors to give you a little bit of a boost. And the last thing I want to talk about, the most controversial thing, is this fake exhaust noise. So we know electric vehicles don't make a ton of noise, so Dodge is going to be adding this fake exhaust note. They're saying this fake exhaust note is going to be just as loud as a Hellcat is right now, which is around 126 decibels, which is equivalent to a sporting event or a loud concert. So the thinking here from Dodge is that they know their customers love these loud V8 engines, and they're hoping that with this fake exhaust note that they'll at least get some interest from their customers to switch. But what I'm really hoping for is Dodge is going to include a quiet mode in this new electric Charger, and I'm going to give you a couple really good reasons why in just a minute, but let's get into our first race. I had the chance to talk to the owner of this Challenger Hellcat, and he was saying he's pushing over 850 horsepower to the wheels, so let's get into the quarter mile race. I think we're going up against another Challenger. Let me see if it's another Hellcat. I can't tell. It doesn't have the Hellcat badge, but that doesn't mean anything because he does have slicks on. Sweet. All right, we got our rear motor cooled down as well, so that's good. Oh, it's got a supercharger. Well, I think all Hellcats have superchargers, but it sounds great. Our motor's getting a little warm here. Should be good still. Oh man! I love the plate too, it's a C on it. Woo! Good still. Oh man! I love the plate too, it's a C on it. Woo! All right. This is great. 0 to 60, 3.27. So a little slow here. Unfortunately, I'm at 66% state of charge. All right, and we did an 11.77 at 114 miles an hour. And the other lane, that Challenger, sorry, was at a 10.08 at 143 miles an hour. I beat him on the reaction time by about 2/10. I was at a 0.088 versus his 0.304. Unfortunately, the margin of victory there was way too big. Let's see, do they show margin of victory? Oh yeah, they do. So margin of victory there was 1.5 seconds. I love to see it. This is fun. I love it. All right, so what do you guys think of that race? It was pretty crazy, right? Obviously, that Hellcat was insanely fast, and it didn't have a perfect launch as well, so I think there's a little bit more time in that car. Nonetheless, it was a ton of fun running the quarter mile, and there's more quarter mile races to come. Let's talk about the pros and cons of Dodge switching to electric and what that means for the auto industry as a whole. One of the big pros of switching to electric is that it's going to save you, that's right, you, a ton of money every year. Okay, so right now in California, gas is about $7 a gallon. I feel like just a few weeks ago it was $5, so I don't know how it jumped $2 so quickly. So that right there is going to save you guys a ton of money, especially if you drive a lot of miles. For instance, here in Southern California, it costs 26 cents a kilowatt hour to charge your car overnight. All right, so let's say this new Challenger Hellcat is going to have a 100 kilowatt battery, and that's going to be roughly about 300 miles of range, I would assume. That's going to be about $26 to charge up this battery pack from empty. So that's much cheaper than gasoline right there, but let's talk a little bit about the time it's going to take you to charge, because I get asked this question a lot. So obviously charging at home is not going to be as fast as going to the gas station, but let me give you a little bit of a breakdown of how I charge this Model 3 at home. So I have a 240 volt outlet that's hooked up to a 40 amp breaker, and that's connected to a Tesla mobile connector. That gives this Model 3 performance about 30 miles per hour or about 7 kilowatts of power per hour. So if I was going to go from a fully empty battery on this Model 3 performance, it would take me about 10-11 hours to fully charge it. Now, of course, you can install bigger home chargers with bigger breakers and bigger power lines, but that's going to cost you a little bit more money. I can get into all those details as well if you guys want. Let me know in the comments down below. But for now, let's just kind of keep it as simple as we can. So going back to this new electric Hellcat, if we assume it has a 100 kilowatt battery, it would take anywhere about 14-15 hours to fully charge that from empty. And of course, you're not supposed to leave these cars fully empty. You're supposed to charge it up every day to about 80%. Now, Tesla recommends only charging to 80% to protect the battery life of the cars. So that gives you about 240 miles of usable range every single day. Now, I know for me and for most people, you're probably not going to be driving over 200 miles per day. But if you do, you can charge a little bit more. Like, let's say you're going on a road trip or something, you can charge to 100%. Now, it's recommended that you don't charge to 100% often because it could damage the battery over a long period of time. I really can't stress enough how convenient it is to be able to wake up every day and know that I have 240 miles of range every single day, and I don't have to worry about going to the gas station again. I don't have to worry about going to Costco and waiting in those long gas lines. Do you know how much time I've wasted in those Costco gas lines? I've wasted hours of my life there. Another big benefit of going electric is that there are fewer moving parts, which means there's a lot less things to break. It also means there's a lot less maintenance. For instance, you don't have to do any more oil changes, no more spark plugs, no more belts, none of that. The only thing you have to do is wiper fluids and maybe your brakes if you're going to the track a lot, and tires. That's pretty much it. But under normal driving, you're not going to be using the normal brakes at all because you're going to be using regenerative braking. The regenerative braking allows the car to slow back down as well as it charges your battery back up. Of course, there's some other benefits to going electric as well, such as being better for the environment, no exhaust fumes, and as well as being silent. Okay, let's talk a little bit about why I want a silent mode in this new electric Charger. Okay, so let's say you're about to head out to work or head to the track or something like that at 4 or 5 in the morning. You don't want to wake your neighbors up. You want to be a kind and courteous neighbor. Another instance, and one that I've personally experienced, is when you're leaving your lady's house at, like, let's say 2, 3 in the morning. You don't want to wake her up, or you don't want to wake up the whole entire neighborhood if you had a loud car. All right, so let's get into some of the cons of Dodge going electric. So as I mentioned earlier, Dodge is going to be able to update these cars over the internet or over Wi-Fi, and that's kind of a bad thing. So Tesla has acceleration boost, which shaves half a second off your 0 to 60 time, and that costs $2,000. Well, Dodge can do something similar. We'll have these power upgrades behind these paywalls or even worse, subscriptions. I think a lot of the Dodge faithful will be extremely upset with them if they did something similar to this, because it takes away from the spirit of being able to work on your car. Now, on the other end, Dodge could actually use this to take power away from the car, let's say in the name of safety or something like that, which I also think owners would be pretty upset with. Now, one of the big concerns I hear from a lot of people interested in switching over to electric vehicles is the range and the charging infrastructure, more specifically the fast charging infrastructure. Now, if you're able to install one of these 240 volt outlets at home, you should absolutely do it because it'll make your life 100 times easier. You'll be able to plug in as soon as you get home and wake up to a full battery every morning. Now, if you're not able to install one of these 240 volt outlets at home, then you're going to need to rely on the fast charging network, such as the Tesla superchargers or electric electrify America. So as of filming, Dodge has not officially announced support for NACS, which is the North American Charging Standard, which is Tesla's plug here in the US. But I would imagine that's going to happen before the car goes into production. So if you're not able to install a 240 volt outlet at home, you can still charge off the normal 120 outlet, which will give you about 3 to 4 miles per hour. So that way, if your commute is relatively short, let's say 50 miles or less, then you can just kind of charge it up at home overnight off the normal 120 volt outlet, and then supercharge if you need to do a road trip or something like that, or if you get low on the battery. All right, so those are the pros and cons of Dodge switching to electric. Let's have a look at the next race, which is against another Hellcat that's putting power down that's similar to that of a Demon 170. All right, we're going up against it looks like a Challenger Hellcat. All right, sweet. That's the matchup I want. Yeah, our motor is red hot right now. Red hot. It is not happy. Let's go. All right. Got a Hellcat on slicks. God, he's at a 926. Wow. Oh my God, he's at a 926. Wow. That's incredible. Wow. Our 0 to 60 was 3.34. Yeah, I think our rear motor is just a little too hot to be doing good times right now, unfortunately. Let's see what our time is here. We did an 11.87 at 113 miles, and the Hellcat in the other lane was a 9.26 at 150 miles an hour. Insane. Our reaction times are within a tenth of each other at 0.126 for myself and 0.187 for that Hellcat. Damn. But that Hellcat was insanely fast. Very cool to see. All right, guys, let's talk a little bit about this race against this white Challenger, which was basically a Demon 170. So it did the quarter mile in 9.26 seconds, which is really close to the Model S Plaid's 9.23. Now, I fully believe that this Challenger Hellcat was actually faster than a Plaid Model S because it was 100 degrees that day, so it wasn't making its maximum power. I was able to talk to the owner of that car, and he was saying that he's pushing over 1,000 horsepower to the wheels, and that's just to the rear wheels because these are just rear-wheel drive cars. So that's a little bit more power than the Demon 170 because the Demon 170 is rated at 1,025 horsepower, and that's to the crank, I believe, not to the wheels. Dodge says the Demon 170 runs a quarter mile in 8.91 seconds, which is a little bit hard for us to achieve because that's on a perfectly prepped track with a professional driver and ideal conditions. So much harder for us to achieve. I would expect the Demon 170 to be in the low 9-second marks for regular people like us. So this white Challenger Hellcat did the quarter mile in 9.26 seconds at 150 miles, and the Demon 170 does it in 8.91 at 151 miles. So the finishing speeds there are very close between these two cars. So I believe that if I was racing against a Demon 170, it would probably be in the similar time to this white Hellcat. I also want to say, and this is not an excuse or anything, this Model 3 Performance is $53,000 MSRP, and Hellcats start at $70,000 to $80,000 before dealer markups, and it's going to cost a little bit more if you want to get more power out of them, like these two Challenger Hellcats that I raced against. And the Demon 170 is actually a little bit more. That's starting at $96,666. Of course, 666 for the Demon there. I like what Dodge did there. It's kind of funny. But some dealers are actually marking this car up over $100,000 over sticker. So that's nearly $200,000 for a Demon 170. Of course, you can now get a Plaid Model S for under $90,000, which is an insane bargain, especially when you compare it to a Demon 170. And if you guys are interested in picking up any Tesla or going on a test drive, please feel free to use my referral code. It's in the description down below. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I want to do more of these hybrid news/racing videos, so please let me know how I did in this video. I know it's a little bit rough, but it's only going to get better from here. Thanks for watching, and if you guys haven't seen my previous video where I raced another Lamborghini and a pair of AMG GTs, please check that out. I'll see you guys in the next video.